ACDC Beyond the Thunder podcast with your thunderous hosts, Kurt Squires, Greg Ferguson, and Eric Cube. Are you ready?
Welcome back to a loud and proud edition of ACDC Beyond the Thunder, the podcast that showcases the true colors of its guests that have been influenced by, yep, you guessed it, ACDC. I'm your host, Kurt Squires, along with my thunderous support team, Eric Keel, who's diddling the knobs behind the board right over there, as well as my trusty cohort, Mr. Greg Ferguson. So, Greg, another tribute band, but this time we got a little twist.
Yeah, we do. As you know, we've had a few cover bands on, or tribute bands. We've had Hell's Bells. We actually interviewed Thunderstruck with Chris Slade. That's an episode that's waiting to come out of the can. So excited about that one too.
Forgot about that one.
We've gone the bluegrass route with Hasty Dixie. We've done the classical route with two cellos. We've been all over. Folk, country. There's a cover band for AC/DC somewhere out there for those guys, too. But literally hundreds of AC/DC cover bands all over. And hands down, one of the most creative takes on AC/DC. Probably the best that I've ever heard and seen. They're quite a visual, is GayC.
Yes, GayC. They've been on our radar for just a couple of years, but believe it or not, this is the band's 10th anniversary. So, Greg, what was your reaction when we first talked about getting these guys on the show?
I think the first time I heard about these guys, my wife Liz introduced me to them, and it was the visual that got me right away. I mean, they can play the music and they can play the music really well, but the visual it's the whole package. It's a sight that you got to see. If you haven't seen GayC, you got to go and Google it and watch some of their live performances. It's 100% electric. It's awesome.
And that's fun. AC/DC is all about fun and cheeky fun, we'll say. I mean it. Let's face it, Angus Young has been stripping for money in front of a largely male audience for most of his career, so there is that.
As you know, the first concert I went to was AC/DC. It was Fly on the Wall tour, and I remember standing there. You were there too at the same concert, Kurt. And I remember standing there, a sea of men all around me, and all of a sudden, the guy on the stage is stripping. I'm like, that's Angus Young, and he's taking his clothes off. Like, what the hell is going on here? But being my first concert, I was like, I guess this is what happens. Then my second concert is Rush. And I remember, standing there and like, when's the striptease going to happen? When's Alex going to take his clothes off? It never happened. It never happened.
Probably a lot of dudes at that show, too.
Yeah, I hung out with a lot of dudes.
Okay, let's get this party started. We're headed to Los Angeles to welcome the world's first and only all-gay AC/DC tribute band, founded by Chris Freeman, who's best known as the bass player and the architect of the queercore punk rock band Pansy Division, but more importantly for today's purposes, the creator and frontman of GayC. Chris, welcome to AC/DC Beyond the Thunder.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Is that true? You're the only all-gay AC/DC tribute band?
That is such a niche of a niche, maybe even another niche that, I'm sure it's true. But and the reason how we thought of the name was several of us were in another band called the Gays, which was an all-gay tribute to the Go-Go's.
Nice.
And our lead singer at the time decided he didn't want to do it anymore. So we were like, well, we're enjoying this. What other names could we do, like with the word gay in it, tribute bands? And one of us, Carl, said GayC. I'm like,
right.
Oh, hold on. Hold on. That's a good one. I like it. Why? That's got to have already been used. And we, now that we have the internet, we can look it up and go, nope, nobody's used it.
Genius.
So we grabbed it.
Well, that's hilarious. I wanted to start off with AC/DC's origin story, which actually begins with a very interesting connection to gay culture when Angus and Malcolm's sister, Margaret, who, by the way, was the mastermind behind suggesting that her little brother wear a schoolboy uniform, originally came up with the band's name, AC/DC.
I did not know these things. I'm fascinated.
Oh, good. So after seeing it on the back of her sewing machine, she said, why don't you name your band AC/DC? And Angus and Malcolm loved it. And they were on their way to a gig in a taxi, and the taxi cab driver said, what's your band's name? And Malcolm said, AC/DC. And the driver said, you're not all gay, are you? And Malcolm and Angus looked at each other and said, what? And the driver then had to explain to the Young brothers that the term AC and DC implies bisexual. And they were completely clueless about that term, and that all started to make sense because they were constantly being booked in gay clubs around town. Did you know this story?
I did not. Honestly, I did hear something about the sewing machine.
Yep.
I did not know, where the background behind that. And I did hear that they were shocked to learn. I have heard that separately, that what the origin of the term AC/DC was. But I always thought that was interesting because didn't Sweet have a song called AC/DC at the time, which is AC/DC, she's got some other woman as well as me.
Yes.
And that was very popular. That was on Desolation Boulevard. So
right.
I'm wondering how they didn't know it just from another song.
I don't know. That's a good question. To be honest with you, I don't think it was a huge term, at least where I grew up in New England. Did you remember that, Greg?
No, I mean, I think I knew what AC/DC was probably in college. Like,
Okay.
That's kind of when that became clear to me.
Me too. So,
well, being gay, are you AC/DC? They would ask me that too when I was a kid. Yeah, when I was young.
wow.
Yeah, they would tease me about it, and they did bring it up. So I've been familiar with it for a while.
Right.
Probably like 74 was when I first started getting really teased in junior high, and that's when I remember becoming aware of that. Yeah. And all the other versions.
Let's talk about your origin story.
Sure.
You were originally born in Seattle, and it was your parents who introduced you to music with piano lessons. But then, ironically, once you considered music as a serious life decision, you were shot down in flames, so to speak, by them. Right?
Very clever. Yes. Yes, I was. My dad used to say, musicians, they're just like one step up from the hookers in a bar.
Oh, man.
And I'd be like, what's wrong with that? And he really got angry, and I had my own job. I mean, I lied on my application at McDonald's, and when I was 15, said I was 16 to get a job, and I started saving money for an instrument. And then when I got my first IRS refund check, I got that big windfall, and I actually could go buy it. And I brought it home, and my dad was like, "What's that?" "Oh, it's my bass, Dad. I'm thrilled. I got a bass." And he was like, "Where'd you get that money?" I'm like, "My IRS refund check from the job."
Nice.
None of your money, thank you.
Wow.
And he still said, you should be saving that money for college. And I'm
Of
like,
course.
yeah, blah blah.
Of course. Well, it was around that time you said it was the first time you heard AC/DC on the radio, like in mid 70s, and
Correct.
which makes you a very early adopter of a little known track called Soul Stripper.
Yes.
What do you recall about that moment?
The FM radio in Seattle in 75 through 78 or so was they could do a little bit more with being like adventurous,
Right.
and playing different things, playing longer versions of things, and some deeper cuts. And in Aberdeen was really, I lived in Aberdeen from 74 to 77.
Okay.
I didn't know Kurt. He's like 6 years younger than me, so
Wow.
I didn't know him, but I knew plenty of people, like the guy from Metal Church.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know the Melvins because they were in a town over. So, and some people that ended up in the Lude later, I knew them. But the radio there was very experimental. The Ramones even played Aberdeen.
Wow.
And some of their songs would get played, like Beat on the Brat. I remember hearing that late at night on the FM station down there, KGHO. They would play other songs, like bands that were coming up, like, okay, we're going to play some of their older stuff.
Yeah.
So I didn't hear Soul Stripper when it came out. I heard it sort of like, okay, the new AC/DC album at the time for me was Let There Be Rock.
Okay.
That was the first album I heard by them.
Yeah.
But then in conjunction, then they play, It's a Long Way to the Top, Soul Stripper, which is still one of my favorite songs. and Ride On was a big popular one at that point because it was so mellow for, late at night. Sometimes they'd even end the night with that song.
Wow.
So I got familiar with that older back catalog, although I didn't have those albums. I only had Let There Be Rock later.
That's amazing. That's a pretty progressive radio station if you think about it. And a very unique song because you've got Bond sounding androgynous as ever. And if I'm not mistaken, I hear like a little maraca going on, some bongos, a disco bass line.
Right?
And then there's some top of a Coke bottle being hit with a spoon kind of a noise. But Soul Strippers definitely an interesting AC/DC, still kind of finding their way. Well, you had said you tried to hide your homosexuality growing up and that you were routinely beat up at school and you were eventually kicked out of your parents' house at 16. What was that time like for you and how did music get you through that period?
Music was always for me a focus. It kept me away from drugs. It kept me away from I dealt drugs at the time, but I didn't. I learned from a dealer. He said, "Don't do your stash. Don't partake of your own stash." I'm like, okay, I got it. So that got me through high school. Yeah, music was really. I thought that was the only thing I was built for.
Yeah.
I really didn't feel like there was anything that gave me any passion. And that went way back to when my parents divorced when I was 9.
Okay.
And there was a massive custody battle, and my mother was found to be an unfit mother.
Wow.
And so there was this whole issue there. But songs on the radio, like Without You by Harry Nilsson, I mean, I would just sit there and bawl like somebody hears me. There's somebody in this radio that knows what I'm going through.
Yeah.
And I felt not alone. And I didn't have many friends back then that I could explain this to. They were all in good families, and mine was falling apart.
Yeah.
So I turned to the radio, and that always became some source of connection.
Is this the beginning of your punk rock angst stage? Like, it seems like it's a good time for it. And even AC/DC was lumped into the punk thing.
They were called punk. They were definitely marketed as a punk band.
Right.
I definitely remember that.
Yeah.
Even Tom Petty, because he dared to wear a leather jacket on his first album cover, he was called a punk.
What, really?
Yes.
That's hilarious.
I mean, you listen to Elvis Costello albums now, they're like you could, sit reading a book to them. But back then he was considered punk.
Yeah.
That's
funny.
So it's so dangerous.
Right.
I think for me, I got into punk probably around 78 into 79. I started hearing about stuff, and more even 77. I was buying magazines with Kiss on the cover.
Right.
As a huge Kiss fanatic, so anything to get another picture of Kiss that I've never seen. So, and then they'd have these articles. Okay, well, here's some of the other bands in the New York scene. Oh, okay. Well, Television, huh? Ramones. Oh, I've heard about them. Oh, and then here's Talking Heads and Blondie, and I was reading about these other bands that sounded exciting to me. And I was starting to also at that time start playing my own shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing other bands. Like my first big band premiere, if you will, like the first time I was really on a stage with lights and stuff, was at Lake Hills Roller Rink. It was called Metal Fest 1981.
Yes.
And on the bill was TKO with Adam Brenner on guitar, who tried out for Kiss later. And Jeff Tate was in 3 bands. He was in Myth, Cathedral, and The Mob. And The Mob were doing Black Sabbath and Judas Priest covers.
Wow.
So, The Mob rules. So that incarnation later became Queensryche.
Right.
But we were second on the bill. My band was second on the bill. But I noticed that there were these huge amps behind me. And I was like, they're empty. What's going on? There's nothing in there. Why would they put these? Oh, I see. It's like stuffing a cock in your pants,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we can't get along with just, our good sounding amp. You got to make this tower of bullshit behind you.
I love it.
And I hated that. Yeah. And I was like that. And then it dawned on me, oh, that's probably what Kiss was doing. And I just didn't even make the connection. My 18th birthday, I got 2 yellow albums. One was the first Devo, and the other was the first B-52s.
Nice.
Those albums started me right down that road. I'd already been listening to the Ramones. I always liked that sort of comic book funny.
Yeah.
Those fit right in.
Fast.
And so I started going more towards that because it felt more authentic.
Mm-hmm.
And I started feeling less like the rock that I was seeing or listening to was authentic. It started to have a decline. Like, and I bought like a Hit Parader cassette that had a bunch of bands on it. I was like, oh,
Right.
some of this is really bad. Like it's just not good.
It was a real fertile time too for bands like that were a bit more, you mentioned Kiss, a bit more flamboyant. You had Queen and Bowie and Reed and the New York Dolls and even Elton John.
Right.
Maybe a dash of disco making waves at that time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of glam hard rock punk coming in, and those must have been exciting for you.
It was very exciting. What was difficult though was I've been to 9 different schools when I grew up. So I was in 2 grade schools, 4 junior highs, and 3 high schools. So I changed school districts and whole friends like within a year in some places.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
I didn't have any, like some people, they grow up with the same people throughout their life and they have these friendships that go back. I don't.
Yeah.
So, but what that also meant was I wasn't pigeonholed at school. So I could listen to anything. So it didn't really bother me to put on the Sex Pistols and then follow it up with Ricky Lee Jones or, you know what I mean? Like I just play whatever I liked.
Yeah.
And I didn't have anybody telling me what was cool or not. I just liked what I liked. But it was harder to find other musicians
Right.
who felt that same way. I was in my first bands before I came out or before I even knew. I mean, I had a girlfriend up until the time I had my first experience with a man and went, oh, that's what it's been this whole time.
Wow.
Now I understand and I gave up pretending. But yeah, that was difficult. I was lucky in that the band that I ended up in, they were all very supportive of me. At some point though, in the mid to late 80s, like 85 or so, we were kind of being sniffed out by A&M Records and they sent up a marketing team. They have these people that come and groom the band and find out what you're about and like what story is here? What can we tell about this band? And it came up that I was gay and they said, well, we know you're one of the main songwriters, but you're just the bass player. And you've got these other singers up here and other people. So we just won't make you available for interviews.
Wow.
And that will give you no opportunity to have to say that you're gay or come up with that. Just don't ever say it.
That's rough.
Wow.
So, and my band members were like, really? Are you going to do that, dude? And I'm like, well, come on. This is what we wanted, right? I mean,
Yeah.
And so I went along with it. And then that folded because there was a lot of pressure. So it ended up not being anything anyway. But it gave me thought like, now I'm not going to be able to, that band's done. Where am I going to find people that are open? And in fact, the last band, I decided to leave Seattle in 87 before grunge and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I met up with this band called Model Citizens. And I walked into the the audition and I was like, oh shit, that's Viv Savage playing keyboards.
Wow. Wow.
David Caffinetti, the actual keyboard player from Spinal Tap, was the keyboard player in this band. I'm like,
that's great.
oh man, this is crazy. What am I doing here? And I stayed with them for a few months and then I just realized I can't because I can't come out to them.
Yeah.
They're not, they're all that, the lyrics are all like, the most horrible, drippy bullshit lyrics from Journey, just really bad. The music was a little like Sisters of Mercy. So it was a little weird, like Sisters of Mercy. And then you're going Tunnel of Love.
Yeah.
I mean, what the fuck?
Interesting combo.
So yeah, I decided, well, I can't do that. And I quit and I sold some gear. I thought, well, that's it. Cause I was 28 and, it takes 2 or 3 years for a band to get off the ground. And if you're over 30, you're never getting signed. Then it was later, I just sort of kept up with the papers. And that's how I ran into the article or the ad for John asking about Pansy Division.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that was September of 91.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, who's that?
Was this the first openly gay rock band?
Yeah.
Wow.
That we knew of.
Yeah.
So so it came to light, that maybe we weren't the first, but you know what? To a lot of people, that was the first time they saw anything like it, is when they saw Pansy Division.
This got the attention of Green Day at this time, and you became the opening act for their very first tour, correct?
Yes. They had done their first 2 records on Lookout. So we became label mates. Like when we first signed on, Larry handed me Kerplunk, which was their second album on Lookout, and I was like, "Oh shit, man, they're not long for your label." I mean,
These guys are good.
this is terrific. Like
Yeah.
if this had a better production, they're going to be huge.
Right.
And
Right.
we were right. But they used to come and see us at Gilman. We didn't really know who they were. They'd spray painted Sweet Children, their first band name. They spray painted that up on the Eve at Gilman. And we played Gilman quite a bit. So they were familiar with us. And I think they wanted to bring that culture, that no homophobia, no violence, no, all that stuff. They wanted to bring that culture on the road with them.
Nice.
I mean, originally it was Tilt was on the tour, and then they tilted and fell off. And then we were asked, and it was a thrill.
That's amazing.
That is great.
Yeah.
And in case you didn't know, just a fun fact, Billy Joe Armstrong added a picture of Angus Young on their Dookie album cover, as he is a big AC/DC fan. So
He is. He certainly is.
listeners, if you're listening, you can go look at your album, and there's a little Easter egg of Angus Young on there.
Yeah.
And we heard on that tour you were playing a sold-out show in Madison Square Garden with Green Day. You called your parents backstage to celebrate this incredible achievement. And how did that call go?
You did dig. Yeah. Well, my dad and I had always had a contentious relationship. I understand now the reasons why I was kicked out, the real reasons, and I understand him more, and I have to forgive him. Otherwise it would eat me alive. But I had one of those moments where, because he always hated that I went with what I did.
Mhm.
I didn't do what he thought I should do, which was join the Navy and be a dentist.
Wow.
Something stable like the arm, or but like the military.
Right.
Everyone's gonna need to get their teeth fixed, kid. And he was totally disappointed in me entirely.
Yeah.
But I finally I felt like this is that moment, where I can say where he might have this aha moment where I'm like, I'm backstage at Madison Square Garden, Dad. You know what Madison Square Garden is. You followed boxing,
Right.
and this is, and he was like, oh, that's good, kid. He didn't care.
Wow.
Did not care.
Sorry, man. That's rough.
The first time where he reached out to me was when we had an article in Newsweek, and that was probably 2009. And Newsweek came into his hands, and he opened up, and there's me. And that was the first time he reached out to me and said, oh, whatever turf he felt was hallowed ground, I ended up there.
Interesting.
And that was the only time.
Wow.
Never seen me play at all.
Never.
Ever. Nope. Wow. Neither of my parents ever came to see me. Nope.
Oh boy.
Like I say, I understood, they were severely damaged people. So they probably shouldn't have been parents.
After Pansy Division, or you're still in Pansy Division, but you eventually moved to LA, and you had mentioned the GayC, which is a Go-Go's tribute band, which is hilarious. And that lasted for a decade, but we were reading where you actually played at Jane Wiedlin's after party for the Go-Go's last show, right?
That was the last show on the tour.
Gotcha.
And then we played the after party. And it was really fun. I mean, she sang with us a little bit, and it was really fun.
So you had a decade-long run with the GayC, and then in 2013, you and fellow GayC bandmate Carl Rumpf, who you had mentioned, decided to form an all-gay tribute to AC/DC. What's more important, a clever tribute band name, because let's face it, they are pretty clever, or the actual band you're covering?
I'm going to say it's the presentation, because you've got a group like Yachtly Crew, and they're not a tribute band, but they're sort of a cover band in a way, but they're exploding one-time capsule.
Mm-hmm.
The 70s, late 70s sort of, which I hated. I mean, I hated that kind of pop, like Christopher Cross. I just loathe
poor
that.
Christopher.
But seeing them do it is a completely different thing. And it made me reassess it, because we played with them at the Viper Room, and I was like, and they did Baker Street, like, and I do like that song, but they made me love it again.
That's
because
great.
Their sax player got up and walked down the bar doing the sax solo. I mean, it was like, okay, presentation is everything.
Yeah.
you can sell people crap. I mean, Kiss has been doing it for years, honestly. I mean, you can sell people crap just by having the best presentation possible. And that's what we decided, it's like, okay, what can we do with AC/DC? Because you've got so many great AC/DC tribute bands
Yes.
that get the look down as well.
Oh yeah, for sure.
We are not going to get the look down with this lineup. I mean, there's nobody in AC/DC that's 6'5".
Oh my
You know,
God.
so I mean, how?
Yeah.
All right. So then we thought, all right, well, then that leaves the whole presentation is up for grabs. We're gonna throw away the uniforms, and we'll do little touches. Like Steve still wears the tie and the school girl skirt.
Yes.
And sometimes I wear the Brian Johnson sort of hat, but I wear a sequin version of it, and I pull it over my eyes and pretend I can't see. There's little references to it, but it's an homage. I mean, there's nobody in the band that's in it to give them the finger.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we spent months woodshedding it. It's like, okay, if we're going to do this, it's got to be right. The music has got to sound good, because as a gay tribute band, the first thing the people in Hollywood are going to do is fold their arms and stare. Okay, show me you got it.
Yeah.
I knew that. I said, we have to be sharp. We've got to have that swing that's in there. So
Yeah.
I said, the drummer, we got to, get this down. Everybody in the band worked so hard. So by the time we were ready, it really was ready.
Goddamn soft. So stop that love on the road. Oh, you're taking for gold. You make me wonder. I wonder. Hooray. Waiting for money.
That's a cool thing about you guys. You really know how to play the music well. And
Thank you.
Speaking of Brian Welch, the drummer who came on board, was he a guitar tech for Extreme?
He was a drum tech for Extreme.
Okay.
And I met him because he was booking the talent for Boston Pride.
Okay.
I met him in 97. He booked our band in Pansy Division. And then we stayed at his house and everything. So I got to know him. And then when he moved out to LA, we just were like, oh, I think we should be friends. Let's be friends. He had seen all along how hard it is to find good drummers in general, but finding a gay good drummer, man, I mean, Pansy Division, we went through 13 drummers before we came up with Luis in 5 years.
Wow.
We had 4 drummers on the Green Day tour alone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I knew how hard it was to find good drummers and finding somebody who could do what we were doing. So one night I got him drunk at the Dresden Room and said, "You've always like crowed that you were the drum tech of Extreme. You had to have been sitting at the kit. You had to have had something that they went, yes, you can do this. So
Sure.
I want to get you in a rehearsal room and see if you've got anything." And he was like, okay.
And he's a true fan. Like I was shocked that he was talking about his favorite AC/DC albums. Or he called it affectionately the letter F Menage a Trois AC/DC albums. For those about to rock, Flick of the Switch, and Fly on the Wall. He cited Fly on the Wall as his favorite, which is an unexpected but awesomely refreshing pick.
For me, not unexpected, because he also he thinks Hot Space is the best Queen album.
Well, that's what makes you guys great.
I mean, he is that kind of guy. He's like, okay, Dynasty is the best Kiss album. Oh my God.
Wow.
we like all the same bands, but for the different reasons.
That's the cool thing about your band. You bring different elements of AC/DC, or a love of AC/DC.
Yes.
And by the way, speaking of Brian, did I read where your stage names are a little tweaked? So his name is Fellatio Rudd. Is that right?
Yes. And they didn't really fly. We were wondering if we wanted to do like alternate egos, like having are we going to have characters that we become on stage? Are they going to have names? And we thought about that, but then they never stuck, because who cares? We're not that famous. So, but we thought, well, all right, that's something we can approach later if that happens. But yeah. So we had these names like Boner Scott, or something, but I mean, it's a little too eye rolly in a way. I mean, it's fun, but and we did start down that road. Like, okay, what is Boner Scott's backstory?
Oh, wow. You went deep.
We thought, all right, well, let's put that on the side, and we might get there someday. But yeah, Fellatio Rudd.
That's classic. Let's talk about Glenn Pavon from the
Yes.
LA Queer Punk Rockers Best Revenge, who took over for
Yes.
you on bass, so you could take on the role of Bon Scott.
Right.
He chose Razor's Edge as something that inspired him most, but surprisingly, it was Rock Band from PlayStation that he said when he joined the band that Rock Band taught him half the songs before he even auditioned.
That's quite possible. Yeah. I mean, I don't know exactly. He did walk in and had it. I mean, in fact, he was like, so I think we had 4 songs prepared at that point. So he walked in and he's like, okay, is that all you got?
Wow. He was ready.
Like I learned 10 or 15 songs and you guys learned 4. So he was really over prepared. It was funny.
Wow. The last guy you had mentioned, Steve McKnight, the jacked up, shave headed schoolgirl, skirt sporting, rainbow striped knee stocking wearing, guitar shredding. He's originally from Cry Wolf, the Sunset Strip band from the 80s. But how did his spin on Angus Young in drag come about? Did you help him with that? Or is that all him?
No. I mean, one of the things I thought of was, okay, if we're going to build this sort of presentation and everybody's going to doll up or whatever they're going to do, I don't want to tell anybody what to do. As far as the music goes, yes, we've got a blueprint. So you're going to follow that. That's going to be for sure.
Yeah.
But everything else, I want to see what you come up with. I'm going to trust your gut to do what you want. And so everybody developed their persona and their stage clothes and everything all on their own.
Nice.
Even like Glenn, he grew a beard at one point and we just couldn't tell him not to wear it. And then finally he saw video of himself with this Grizzly Adams beard. And he goes, that looks awful. I'm like, thank God. Thank you. Yeah. We couldn't tell you not to wear it because you can't do that. With Steve, he actually had this like, okay, I'm going to be the bodybuilder from another country, like a Heidi kind of thing. And he took that from the first video of AC/DC where Bon Scott did the Pippi Longstocking wig.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So he actually had the wig for the first couple of shows, but after the second song, it slid right off. I mean, there was nothing to hold it onto.
Oh my God. I forgot. Bon did a little drag show himself.
Yeah. Bodybuilder, schoolgirl gone wrong. So he did that whole, all of that himself. He came up with the tie and the skirt and everything. Cause I was like, I don't know what you're going to do. If you're going to have a sachet that like a satchel that you wear, like a book bag.
Yeah.
That's what he did. And I'm like, oh, of course. There it is.
Perfect.
Yeah.
He's kind of like doing an Angus Young striptease, but throughout the entire show, because is he wearing anything underneath the skirt?
At times. It depends on how high the stage is, honestly, or how rowdy he's feeling. Sometimes he'll sit in the back and we're about ready to go on, and he'll be like, no, I'm going commando.
Oh my God. We had done some digging on Steve. He said that If You Want Blood was his favorite album from AC/DC, which gives him a lot of credibility because that's a great live record. And he said that he actually attended the Day on the Green performance at the Oakland Coliseum, which is amazing because that was like 1978 or so. So he's
Right.
definitely an old school fan.
Yes, correct. When we sort of presented him with this idea, he really jumped at it. He was like, yes, definitely I'll be Angus. He does things precisely, but he also does them a little notch up. So he adds a little bit of zhuzhing, his own guitar zhuzhing to the playing. So it's a little bit more than just Angus. It's hyper Angus.
I love that.
Yeah. And I mean, Steve, I don't think I've ever been this close to a guitar player of his caliber, honestly.
He's pretty phenomenal. As a brief insert for listeners here, following this recording, GayC rhythm guitarist Clint Yeager sadly passed away at the age of 53 from complications during surgery. The band are obviously heartbroken, and we wanted to let the guys know that we're thinking about them. But during this time of grieving, GayC want to honor Clint's legacy by moving forwards, and listeners, they are on the lookout for their new Malcolm Young. So if you're a gay man based in LA and you've got the rhythm, you too can audition to join the band right now. Simply send the group 1 or 2 clips of yourself playing some AC/DC and go to gaycdc.com, gaycdcofficial.com, and that's it. Good luck. And on another note, Greg, Eric, and I have established 2 charities that we are donating to, the Make-A-Wish and Northrop Robbins Foundations. And if you're a fan of listening to the AC/DC Beyond the Thunder podcast, pledging as little as $1 or the price of a cup of coffee to these deserving causes is what we're all about. You can donate at the beginning of the show, after you listen to the episode, or some other time. But here's what you do. You go to beyondthethunder.com, you hit the charity button, and PayPal will do the rest. And if you donate, then we just may call your name out on the show, like Remy Andre Unvik, Kel Way, and Christian Spurk. Or as fans around the globe know him, Spurky. For your donations, gentlemen, we salute you. Back to the show. The wild thing about what GayC does is that there's no more masculine band than AC/DC. Let's say that. They just ooze machismo and blue collar and toughness. But you guys just totally flip that on its head, and you're dressed in drag, making lyrics even more single entendre, if that's possible. But the concept is so much more arresting than, let's say, if you guys did a Hall & Oates tribute band or something like that. You know?
Right.
Is it a prerequisite to be gay in the band?
No. Thankfully worked out that way.
Yeah.
I mean, in Pansy Division, that was the goal forever, was to be the all gay band. And we still aren't. Our lead guitar player in Pansy Division for 19 years now is Joel Reeder, who was the bass player in Mr. T Experience.
Okay.
And he's straight, but we've known him forever. He helped us out in a pinch, and we were like, well, then would you mind joining? I mean, we love you, or, and he had no problem with it. So at some point, being all gay, I have to say no.
Yeah.
If we had to find somebody, and in fact, we actually have played a show when Brian was out of town. We played with the drummer for Bonfire, who is amazing player, so good. So we call them allies.
Right.
As long as the people along the front are delivering that, more than delivering the gay message, smearing it all over everybody.
Well, you mentioned a Bonfire. Do you have some favorite AC/DC tribute bands out there? By the way, the gals in Hell's Bells say hello. They're very big fans of you.
Thank you. I was just going to say Hell's Bells. Absolutely. Yes, they were so much fun. I've seen them several times. Bonfire, excellent band. Beyond that, I haven't seen too many.
What's the best thing about being in a tribute band?
I was not going to use the word easy, but it's not as difficult as selling your own songs to an audience you don't know.
Yeah.
So if I'm playing in Pansy Division, now we've got years and albums behind us, so most of the people that show up are going to know our stuff. But originally, going out and playing your own material is really bearing. It's like taking your clothes off in some way. I hope they like my babies,
Sure.
Whereas with a tribute band, and especially like AC/DC, the people are going to love it. As long as you deliver the music correctly and get them going, get their body going, the presentation can be anything.
You once said that most gay people are not interested in rock. They want EDM and show tunes. And so does that mean your audience is more straight than gay?
Absolutely correct. And that's true for Pansy Division too.
Huh.
Although Pansy Division did just play a few shows this last weekend, and I was surprised at the number of younger queer youth, people who don't associate with anything yet, were at these shows. They weren't even born when we started.
Wow.
Oh, that's hard to say. Wow.
I'm s-
Oh my God, I just said it out loud. It's
Yeah.
like, oh man.
I know.
I think being gay and being seen as gay to me is really important. I think that lesson to me for when I couldn't come out to the keyboard player in Spinal Tap. I'm sure he would have been okay with it,
Yeah.
but their music didn't match me at all. Like it was just so even more heteromachismo than AC/DC. AC/DC always had humor,
Right.
right?
Yes.
That's what I love.
Yeah.
That's what I loved about good punk was the humor part.
Yeah.
Devo made me laugh. AC/DC early stuff that some of that made me laugh so hard.
Sure. Well, tell us about some of the AC/DC song titles you've rearranged to better fit your shtick.
Well, I'll tell you about the one that I haven't rearranged, and that's Big Balls.
Oh yeah, some of them write themselves, right? Like "Let's Get It Up" pretty much works as is.
Right. Unfortunately, a lot of the songs that we want to add to the set are mid-tempo. And so like Let's Get It Up, those songs are not as good live.
They don't boogie as much.
They don't, if you do too many of them, you're starting to lose your audience and you see them going to the bar and I know better. I can see it.
And I always fill my ballroom. The event is never small. The social pages say I've got the biggest balls of all. I've got big balls. Oh, I've got big balls. And they're such big balls and they're dirty big balls. And he's got big balls. And he's got big balls. But then we've got the biggest balls of them all. My balls are always...
So, it's hard because there's only a handful that are really, really fast. And oh, by the way, that was another reason why AC/DC were considered punk, because Let There Be Rock was one of the fastest songs on the other side of Motorhead
Right.
at the time. Nobody was doing that speed.
That's true. In that time period.
Yeah, only punk bands were allowed to be that fast.
I was wondering why during Let There Be Rock, you have a Bible in your hand. That's a little wink of getting back at someone, isn't it?
I tear up a Bible in just about every show I've played since '97.
Wow.
In Pansy Division or in GayC/DC, I make it a point to rip up a Bible because to me, I saw it. It wasn't an idea I came up with. I saw Marilyn Manson on the Antichrist Superstar tour, and he did the same thing. He was ripping up Bibles and throwing out Bibles into the audience.
And getting some drag ideas from him too.
That's correct. That's correct. Absolutely correct.
And you had come up with let's see, Whole Lot of Rosie became Whole Lot of Jose.
Yes. With a
So
color
good.
appropriate dildo too.
Oh my God, you guys, so clever.
I love putting little Easter eggs and stuff with the props and, getting people, if they see it and they know, they know.
Right.
They know, yeah.
Well, you were also joined on stage, was it the Viper Room, with former Skid Row frontman Sebastian Bach singing TNT. How did that come about?
Yes. Well, so I met him. He was friends with Kelly Deal, who was the sister of Kim Deal in the Pixies.
Yep.
Oh,
Kelly Deal had a band called Kelly Deal 5000, and Pansy Division played some shows with that band in New York. I did the sound check, and Kelly's band was coming in to do their sound check, and I went downstairs, and Sebastian's downstairs in his, tour jacket from Motley Crue and his long hair, and he's smoking a huge joint. And so he goes, "Hey, dude." And I was like, "Okay, hi, Sebastian Bach. Yes, of course I know who you are." And he said, "Dude, are you in Pansy Division?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Sit down." And we sat down. And he said, "I just want to say, dude, I am so fucking sorry for that shirt.
oh, the shirt.
I am sorry to this day
I know what you're talking about.
for being so reckless with that and not knowing what I was doing. And I should have known better. And now I know so many gay people, and they're close to me and my dear to my heart. And I just want you to know how badly I feel. Here, have a hit."
Wow.
And I was like, "Yeah, I'm right back. I'm right back. Thank you so much for telling us that." Because now,
Yeah.
whenever we talk about that in interviews, we will say, because at the time, lots of people asked our opinion
Yeah.
of that shirt.
For listeners who don't know, this was the interview with Kurt Loder where Sebastian was wearing a shirt, and what did it say? I don't know if I'll repeat it.
Yeah, it says AIDS kills fags dead.
Yeah.
And it was in that Raid sort of logo, like the bug spray.
I remember that.
Yeah. He was really, and he wasn't just being, he could have been rock starred out. He really dialed it down and was like, I am sorry. I want to tell you and have you tell everybody, please. I'm sorry for that.
Yeah.
And this one time he said, let me sing a song. I'm like, okay, so
That's
let's
cool.
I'll step aside and let him do all the lyrics, because there's no sense in trying to get him to figure out our new lyrics. Let's just have him do it. And he picked TNT. So we were like, do it. Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, I'm thrilled that he was on stage with us. That was him saying, please accept me.
Yeah.
Please accept my apology.
Good for him. I saw Doug Pinnick was on stage with you, the bass player from King's X.
Yes.
What did he play with you guys?
Well, I think he saw us at the Eagle, and again, Brian befriended him more and brought him into the fold, and we've been good friends with him. Yeah, I mean, it's odd to say, people that are like, okay, they're my friends. I'm like, how?
That's awesome.
And he said, but I want to play a song with you, and it worked out to be Let There Be Coffee. And he was great. He was great.
Oh my god!
Like, okay, I'm turning around and like, Glenn's doing the tambourine instead, and I'm looking back, and there's like, okay, it's Doug Pinnick. It's okay.
Wow.
You get that moment on there, like, oh.
I actually met that guy backstage once. He's like a praying mantis. His arms are like all the way down to his shins.
Yes, that's how he can hold that bass all the way down like that. It's like, way down there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I like the version of Long Way to the Top with is it Well Hung Heart?
Correct.
And you don't play the bagpipes, but actually, what are you blowing into there, Chris?
It's called a melodic. I just heard how you said that. I'm like, that was good. It's called a melodica. You might remember the sound in the Hooters used to have that in their sound. That was their sound.
Oh, yes.
That was the only way I could do it.
Yeah.
If you think it's easy playing one night stands, try playing in a rock and roll band. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Even as a tribute band, where they're going to pretty much like certain things about it, the gay angle can upset some people.
Sure.
We were really lucky to find that I think people are taking it more like a bachelorette party.
Yeah, that's fun.
We're like a bachelorette
Sure.
party. The girls are happy, so the guys are going to be
Right,
happy.
exactly.
Get your girlfriends there, get them horny, and there you have it. And so that was, I think we've been very happy with the reception that we've been getting outside of LA, for sure.
Did you ever like show up at a club, like the wrong club, and your shtick didn't work?
Oh my gosh. No, we haven't. Honestly, I do think that in Pansy Division we've encountered that. Like, there's been shows that we were on and like, oh God, no. Why, nobody there wanted us there. So why are we there?
I guess with a name like GayC, people know what they're walking into. So.
Right. Well, and I think that's more, they can look us up and see what we're about to see. There's plenty of footage and plenty of stuff to see to get an idea of what we're going to be like in person.
Well, I wanted to go deep here. A couple of last final questions here. AC/DC Beyond the Thunder, what we do is basically a passion project which sheds light on how this one band has timeless music and affected so many unique people like yourself in so many diverse ways. What makes AC/DC so special to you in your mind?
Because they never pretended to be anything than what they are. They were completely authentic, which is what I was looking for in punk, an authentic expression.
Nice.
They kept their sound, even though they, changed their drum sounds and stuff in the 80s. Who didn't?
Right.
At that point, you had to. If you were gonna have a deal in the 80s, you had to do something.
Yeah.
Look at Heart. What an overhaul they had. And AC/DC sounded pretty much the same, just different drum sounds. Well, no, honestly, they had different drummers back then too. Well, and you mentioned Flick of the Switch. That is again, they went right back to being, what is this band like live? What do we sound like?
Yeah.
I could picture them. You know what I mean? Like there was no like extra keyboards or extra stuff getting in the way.
Mm-hmm.
Even Back in Black, I could put it on, just go, yeah, here's a guitar, the bass, drums, voice, it's all right there.
Nice.
And that sort of connection, because I can listen to other albums and go, what's the room I'm in? Where am I? That's overproduced.
Right.
And they're just simple. And here's what we do. And we do this best. That to me has always been amazing. And a two-hat trick like that, nobody does that. I mean, how many bands have ever done that? I mean, I could say maybe Genesis lost their singer.
Handful.
And they both actually stayed pretty darn,
Yeah.
But to lose your singer at a crucial time
Right.
in their history, and to just, I mean, for me, I loved Highway to Hell.
Yeah.
And I loved Power Age before that. Still my favorite though is Let There Be Rock, since it was my first,
Of course.
But when they hit Back in Black, I was like, who could have done this besides them and have this amazing album? Like, wow, So I've always had like a major heart for them,
How has AC/DC changed your life?
Well, because they were the bridge that kept me interested in hard rock at all. Because I would have been a punk all the way if it weren't for bands like AC/DC that were like, yeah, you don't mess around. You just show up and do it.
Yeah.
And that ethic as well. Like that's an ethic that they show up and they blow everyone away. Everybody. You can't play after AC/DC. There's no way. And I've taken all those rules in. It's like, be the band that nobody can play after. Do what you want.
I love it. Well, Chris, thank you for visiting us from sunny California to brighten our day.
Yes, thank you.
And making AC/DC your very own fabulous thing. Our last question that we ask all of our guests is, if you had to distill AC/DC down to one word, what would your one word be?
So
I figured there'd be a sexual innuendo.
Oh my gosh. Okay, balls. There you have
it. AC/DC Beyond the Thunder theme song, Trailer Trash, written and performed by Gannon Arnold. VO talent by Bruce Jacobson. Cinematography and sound recording by Greg Ferguson. Edited and mixed by Eric Keel. Written, directed, and hosted by Kurt Squires. Produced by Greg Ferguson, Eric Keel, and Kurt Squires. AC/DC Beyond the Thunder is a Squires LLC current motion production. Copyright Beyond the Thunder podcast, all rights reserved. This has been a Nat Attack presentation.
Shazbot Nanu Nana.